On this episode of AV Week, ISE postpones to June of 2021 and what touchless will mean to AV. All that and more next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 474, recorded Friday, September 18th, 2020. Nobody knows.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment, and by FSR.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. Typically, I would introduce a panel, which I will do in just a second, but we have a special guest because earlier this week, Integrated Systems Europe announced that they would be postponing their signature event, ISE, in Barcelona. This was to be the first year in Barcelona in February. They are now looking at dates in June of 2021. Specifically, the 1st to the 4th is when the new dates are. And with us to discuss this development is Managing Director, Mr. Michael Blackman. Welcome, sir.
Hi, Tim. Good to see you again, and glad to be here again on AVNation.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. So walk me through this. The original dates were early February. Couple things, from a health standpoint, globally, the U.S. is still kept out of large parts of the world in general, at least. I think there's now up to 6 or 7 countries we can go into. But you guys, you making sure that your customers and your attendees are safe, have made the decision to move. What was the thinking and the kind of that process for you guys?
Well, Tim, firstly, as any organizer will tell you, you prepare for all sorts of eventualities. I think I told you once before, I learned everything about this business from a wonderful guy called Brian Montgomery. And Brian used to be the president of UFI, the organization for trade shows. And he wrote a book called Traps, Minefields, and Lacunae. And basically, the basis of this book was that almost anything can go wrong in this business. The best thing you can do is prepare for as many eventualities as possible. So that's what we did. And since April, March, April, we had a reserve date in place. Because one of the things we thought about, even at that time, to tell the truth, we walked out of Amsterdam saying, this will all be over in a month and we're fine. When we saw at the end of March, it was still there and still a problem. We said, what if? So, speaking with FERA and understanding that if shows are going to be cancelled, we're going to get this sort of ramping up where people are moving to the next date. So you're going to get firstly, it was the last half of 2020. Then it's starting to be the first part of 2021. And we said, okay, what happens when they start thinking about the second quarter or the second half? So we reserved the date with FERA as a hold reserve just in case. Now, obviously, we have to keep things like this secret for a long while because there are a lot of things that get affected when that news gets out, as we've seen. So when we got to the stage of thinking, things are not getting better. They may still be okay, but they're not going in the direction where we think it could be really, really safe. So we need to maybe do some preparation. So in that stage, we started to actually talk to a number of our exhibitors, and it wasn't just the big guys. There were a lot of the big guys we didn't talk to, but we talked to a cross-section of our customers to get their feeling, just to do that thermometer test, say, guys, what do you think? How's your feeling, etc. What was very clear is the industry wants to have in-person events. They really want to get back to having this. They're very keen to see them happening as soon as possible. But there were also concerns, and most of them said, whatever you do, if you stay in February, we'll support you. But we do have our concerns because we're hearing that maybe some of our customers may have problems with still traveling that time, other issues, and we prefer to get a couple of more months breathing space when the weather's better and perhaps people are not affected by the flu and other issues. So having got that, we then had our discussions to actually say, okay, what are the possible dates? And this was something where we said, okay, no. We also asked those companies saying, well, what dates would you recommend? And categorically all said middle of the year. And we saw the issue there and said, okay. So we had a discussion with, Dave Labuscus is our is chairman of our board, and we had Tabitha O'Connor in there, etc. And we also had discussions with Rochelle Richardson, separate things, say, look, there's a challenge here. How do we deal with it? And what are the effects? And we looked at all the statistics, and we looked to see, okay, what is going to be the worst case for both Infocom and ISE by moving the ISE show to the first week of June. And we looked at it and said, okay, that's our worst case. And, when we look at it, firstly, our attendee overlap, we only get 5%, 4.74% of our attendees come from the USA. So we said, okay, the overlap, and I think from Europe to the Infocom show is probably also only less than 10%. I'm not sure of the exact number, so please, Rochelle, forgive me if I got it wrong. It's not significant enough to cause too much damage. We said, okay, in that case, this is we're not going to lose too many visitors on either side as a result of this. Where the challenge comes is actually our exhibitors. We know there are many, 11% of ISE's exhibitor base is from North America. So it's where the contracts are signed. Now, this also includes companies like Crestron or Bayern or QSC, etc., who have personnel and people in Europe. But we said, okay, worst case is they have a challenge on this, whether it's product, whether it's the stand itself. We are going to be talking with them to say, how do we solve this? And we have ideas. And we'll be having those discussions in the next days. So, we saw this as an issue, but we had to also keep this all under wraps for a long while, because once we've made that decision, there are a lot of other negotiations going on that we have to tie down, and primarily the hotels. Many of our exhibitors and even attendees get these mails from unauthorized hotel agencies who are trying to make money. Sometimes they're legitimate and they're just putting a bit more on top, and you end up paying more going to them. And sometimes they're companies who are cheating you. I know of people who went to Amsterdam and have booked over unofficial agencies and got there and the hotel said, we don't know who you are, we don't have a booking. That happens. We try to tie that down before the unauthorized companies get involved, and before the hotels. We started off discussion and saying, look, this is under consideration, and part of the whole package is that you play with us and keep your rates down. We had to do this whole thing when actually stepping on Barcelona as well. We had that negotiation with the hotels to tie them up at reasonable rates. Otherwise, as we all know, hotels and airlines make hay when the sun shines.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
They need to make a lot of hay at the moment because they're not getting great to the sunshine. We had to go out and start these negotiations to try and keep those prices. Now, we've managed to actually lock down the majority of hotels with the same rates and conditions that we had for the February date. But unfortunately, because this got out early, before we were ready with those negotiations, we didn't manage to get all of them. So because the ones who we hadn't reached yet, they just sit back and say, well, we're going to get the business anyway. That's unfortunate now, but yeah, that's life. It happened.
It is. It is. I do want to hit a couple of different points here. According to Joy Lloyd from AVIXA, the percentage of non-U.S. or non-North American attendees is all about 11%. Article in AV Network and SCN. But talk about this process, because you mentioned a couple of premier manufacturers who are based in the States, but they do have European contingents. As I mentioned in the outset of this, currently, a United States citizen cannot get into the EU. Not to be silly or pointed, but Barcelona is in the EU. So is it something where you guys are going to work with exhibitors and their staff if either you can't get, product, or they simply can't staff a booth? And we'll point out Crestron for a second. A vast majority of the folks supporting that booth and that are in that booth are Americans. Now they do have European contingent, but they don't have the numbers that they bring over.
Well, there are two things. When it comes to travel, that's something we just can't influence. As much as I'd like to say we know some of the right people, none of the governments are going to listen to us about, getting you over, Tim. So unfortunately, and this has been actually some of the biggest concerns. Actually, not about getting products or having a booth. It's more about, will I be able to travel?
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons for actually moving it back to saying the likelihood of opening up travel is higher in June than it will be in February. So, this is one of the factors that got into our decision making.
That makes sense. All right, sir. As we all kind of move into the fourth quarter of this very interesting year, and you guys gonna kind of plan for something else that you've talked about is having a virtual component. And I want to real quickly before I let you go. A couple of weeks ago, our friends over at AV Magazine had an article about the PLSG lighting show, and I find it fascinating as you exhibit producer, looking at shows that are already happening this year. You've talked about in several places, Commercial Integrator and others, about having a virtual or a hybrid version of ISE. What are some of the things that you're looking at making sure that folks can still attend and experience some of the things that they're used to?
So, I think this is where we've been lucky. We've been able to watch everybody else and what they're doing and learn from that. And, I think everyone in the last quarter have been pioneers in what they've done and actually, coming out and showing things and giving ideas. And, what we've realized now is that everybody is doing digital events. So there's always this online fatigue part of it. What we've learned is attendees don't stay the whole day. So you have to put things into bite-sized packages and just assume, maybe you get 10,000 attendees for the day, but how many of them stay for the whole time? How many of them are just in there for half an hour, 1 hour, whatever? That's the first thing. The second point is that there needs to be, from the exhibitor point of view, they want to see interaction. They want to see connection with the attendees. Otherwise, there's no value to them. And that part has to be very, very satisfactory. At this stage, I won't make any comments about, virtual reality and creating three-dimensional booths, etc. Because I don't know yet what, is this a gimmick or does it really work? And these are things we're still learning about and trying to get feedback from people to say, what's your experience? What do you think of this? So that we can actually say, do we do that part or not? What we do know is that there are elements, the education side works. That's one of the easiest parts for us to produce. The key point will be the value to our customers in creating interaction between them and the visitors and making that interaction valuable for both sides. And it's trying to make that platform part of it work. We think there are lots of elements. I mean, whatever happens from my point of view and from my business's point of view, in-person events are what's got to come back and happen. And this is what everybody is telling us. The virtual part is something which is just because of the situation. There is value to it, and I think long term we will still have virtual parts to our events, and we see the advantage of that. And I hope that I can tell you at the moment we have not finalized our decision on what platform or exactly what we're going to do, because every time we get close to saying we want to do that, something else happens. We say, oh, we didn't think of that. So we said, okay, we want to take our time to make sure we can produce the best possible solution. And that's why we haven't been able to announce and say, this is how the IC virtual platform is going to look. But certainly it will be a hybrid event. What we will be doing is in the lead up is engaging with our customers on both sides, and we're trying to bring them together in a series of virtual events leading up to ISE. And again, we're still working on our platform. We're talking to various people and ideas, particularly our conference partners, in bringing some of these people in beforehand to give a bit of taste of what's coming at ISE in June. So we've got a lot of ideas, and we see it as a tester leading up to what we actually do at ISE as well. A bit more practice to get it perfect. So we have a lot in place, a lot planning, a lot that hasn't been finalized, but now we have more time. Not a great deal of time, but we have some more time to do this. We're excited. I've got a fully motivated team behind me. The rest of the ISE team are still very, very excited about delivering a show for this market in 2021.
Thanks so much for watching this first segment of AV Week. To check out the rest of the episode for free, click on the link below or go by the website, avnation.tv. It's avnation.tv.